tutors, mentors, and the city with your host.com.
The City Tutors presents
Tutors, mentors, and the city
with your host.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Kevin.com Brown here for a very special edition. This is special for a couple of reasons. One is this is one of the first times we're ever doing our interviews live and in person at the beautiful Yes Mama, but I'm getting the opportunity to interview our executive director, the founder of City Tutors. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Garri Rivkin. Yay! This is the guy. This is the guy that hired me. Took him 6 months. Took him 6 months of scrutiny and background checks. And I love this guy. This is an honor. Garri, welcome. Welcome to your show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. So I tell people, anybody who doesn't know, I'm a professional stand-up comedian, professional actor, and for the last 3 decades, I'm usually the smartest guy in the room, unless I'm in the room with Tina Fey, right? Then I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but typically I'm the smartest guy in the room. And then I meet Garri Rivkin and the City Tutors, and I'm never the smartest guy in the room. The ecosystem that he introduced me to and he embraced me and welcomed me into has changed my life. So thank you so much, first of all, for bringing me into this world. But that being said, Garri, tell us about the City Tutors. Where did this whole thing come from?
Yeah, I appreciate the flattery, but I think one of the important things is, for me, recognizing how not so smart I am and how actually this entire journey kind of revolves around that fact being at the center of it. I went into education knowing that I had trouble learning. I struggled mightily with math, and I didn't even think that I could get into college, never mind excel, never mind get a fulfilling career after. I was always kind of the black sheep, family, wicked smart in math and science. My mom is a chemical analyst. She built microchips. My dad is an architect, all back in Lithuania. But my journey begins with a lot of insecurities about my own learning. And when City Tutors began, it was in recognition that my challenges are not because I'm inherently flawed as a learner, but because the structures that I've been part of have not nurtured my growth. Oftentimes were at odds with ways that would make me successful, and we're also really not positioning others for success either. So that origination point is kind of makes me recognize always, if I'm gonna compete against other people, I will fail. But learning shouldn't be a competition. It is your own individual growth journey. And there's a lot of opportunity for us collectively to succeed if we all recognize that we're on some kind of development journey and that we could benefit from knowing each other and growing together. So that's City Tutors as a conceptual starting point, but on where did it come from? It also originates from the fact that I've been around a lot of the institutions that make New York City run, and they are so vital to it, vital to the ability of many people who are like me, who are first gen. Like, for everything that I said, that my family had all this education, all of that is in another country. I came with my mom to a country where I spoke no language, where I had no nobody in my community who could elevate us quickly into the middle class. We were starting over from coming from a culture, Soviet culture, to now a fundamentally different imagining of what an individual can do. And there's still, my mom still thinks in many ways like it's pre-European Union. She has like her worldview kind of fixed in that, and having to basically grow up on my own and having to navigate those waters, no matter if in the, like, knowing that there are genes in my family that they're smart, they've accomplished something. It's like that doesn't mean much when the slate kind of gets wiped and you begin again. And now, like, all of those things are almost mythic in nature, and you are but a little fish in a massive pond, New York, but in a country where you're always hearing about how the individual and their ability to kind of be something, like, you should just do it, but you're this little fish, and you're also caught in waters that are just kind of pulling you back, and not really knowing, am I going to be able to be successful if I do anything that the people around me are saying, and what is it that I even want? Like, there's a lot of uncertainty. So I knew that I couldn't succeed in the ways that my mom wanted me to. She wanted me to be a doctor. She wanted me to be a lawyer. She wanted me to realize, the typical kind of, well, what a typical Jewish mother would want for their child. And also what like historically is known to allow for success. I know that I only, by the time I reached college, did I know how to have control over the English language. I was struggling with it to the point that even in my first year, I would sit there and I would listen to the professors, and they would say something, and I wanted to respond, but I needed time to think, and it would take me 10 minutes, 15 minutes before I realized, okay, this is what I wanted, and I needed to move the conversation backwards in order to engage in it, and it always felt like I was behind. So I went into college, and I was fortunate that I even went to college, and it was, I'm quite fortunate that there was an opportunity for you to interview my 12th grade English teacher.
Yes.
Because she's the one who actually made it possible, made me feel like I could actually do it and go into that. And nobody in my school even knew about City College or CUNY. She directed me there, but I was uncertain. I went into it not having known about anything. Again, just a little bit, like months before, I wasn't even sure whether I was going to go anywhere. So going into college was with a lot of uncertainty, and then there was a lot of positive stuff that started forming very quickly. But it really felt like I was the luckiest person that somebody told me about the school. And then it so happened that finally I gained the fluency in that first year. And then finally things picked up in the right way. And I was able to complete school. And reflecting back on all of that, it's like, but what if it was a little bit to the left of that or to the right of that. I would have, all of the things, all of the issues that I was facing, all of the insecurities could have just crept up and pulled me back and made it not possible for me. Like what I realized after I graduated, it makes a lot of people's journeys stop because they didn't meet that right person. And they didn't go to their formation, their skills are not exactly quite there for that particular class, and nobody is there to like catch them. And that graduation was beginning of a journey of reflection, of just trying to figure out. I realized I got lucky. How can I pay back that fortune and make it a little bit more institutional? How could I be a force for good, like you coming back to school? I began there, and I became a teacher. And for a decade, that is something that I've been engaged in, and it was something that I did first for myself to understand. Like I learned about myself through the challenges that I faced, and I wanted to make others not experience that. But in going and pursuing that line of work, I also realized just how much I did not know, and how much many of my peers who were also teaching did not know, because they're like, we're all coming from this position of we want to do good, we want to be supporting the community, but I might have had a little bit more training than them. I went into a program where I was actually being prepared to teach. Others were going in and they weren't. And so it was a lot of experimenting on students. And that also made it feel something wasn't right. It's like there's the part of I want to do good, but I don't know really how to do it. I need to build up this experience, but the institutional setup is such that it's really big, and it's easy to oftentimes kind of get lost in the machine. Like I think all of us in any like big system, and CUNY is a massive system. It does so much good, but it is a massive system. That it often it felt like, what if there was a little bit more individual experience that could be had for each person? What if every person could just be able to get the support they needed, and not for me to play some kind of learning game on them? Like, what if I was more responsive to them and not trying to learn about them while learning about what learning means, while also learning how to work in a system where I have to teach them and then 13 other classes, because adjunct life is tough and you're pulled in many different directions. So this is all a long-winded way of saying it began as a personal journey. It began as a journey of someone coming into a new country and trying to figure out themselves, and then figuring out how they could be a force for good and find meaning in work, and then finding out how to make that good into something that's institutional and something that works on a structural level, as opposed to on a happenstance, fortune, whatever words you want to put, but feels kind of like dependent on a person and on a person's will. And that, like, then we're we're playing a game where that will can change as the person changes.
Wow. So City Tutors, founded at City College. You're an alum of City College. You are an alum. I am an alum. Your right-hand man, Michael Chin, is an alum of City College. 10th anniversary.
Yeah.
10 years ago, you came up with the idea.
Yeah.
Everyone I speak to from your past, I've interviewed quite a few folks, like you mentioned earlier in the answer, one of your early young man teachers, English teacher maybe, I'm not sure. Twombly, she was
Miss
what?
Twombly.
Miss
Yeah,
Twombly.
12th grade AP
12th grade,
English.
okay. But everyone I meet from your past talks about how when you came to class, they knew they had to step up their game. That's been a consistent message from them. They knew that this young man was going to challenge them intellectually, right? They got, it seemed like young Garri gave them the impression that you came and you were about business. You were there to learn, and you demonstrated that by your attention and your effort and your it was outward, and they recognized that, and they were like, okay, I'm gonna have to bring my A game to this young man. Where'd that come from?
I think so have I always had a personality where I wanted to challenge the establishment? Sure, from a very young age. I remember right before we left for America, I was in first grade, and the teacher was so sick of me by like middle of because I kept correcting her and telling her how she's wrong. First grade, I'm correct, and I'm right. She is. She was asking, so when are you leaving for America? When is that happening? Is that soon? It was like, I guess that person, I don't know where that personality comes from. It's just kind of like I never felt like someone was beyond me. We're all peers. I might be a first grader, and you might be my teacher, but we're colleagues in this learning endeavor, and I wanna learn. Whenever I felt like I had the footing, like I had the language, I was on the same vibe, then I felt like we're collaborating together, and I felt attracted to ideas that we are a community. As opposed to, so I don't view it as a kind of I'm better than you. That is not where I brought it. That was not at all. It was more forget about us having this kind of like hierarchy, having this power dynamic, where I'm interested in learning. You're interested in teaching, like. Okay, great. And that has carried over into everything. I've always been disinterested in saying the thing that might be right. I want to say the thing that would be interesting. And so I would listen, and I'm like, okay, so where's my spot? Where's the thing that nobody has said? Like, and so that has always been with me. I've actually, from a young age, I love to write. I wrote YA novels back in 5th grade. The principal gave us an opportunity. I wrote a book, and I got to present. My poetry was read to kindergartners. So I created my own story that I would tell my friend over the phone. I would tell him that it was an actual TV show. And I would just like that was always something that I'm interested in, doing something that actually contributed and made people feel something or have some kind of experience. And that's what learning has always been, an endeavor to to find something that where I can make a contribution. And then I've taken that into my work. How can I be a contributor? Which I guess made a lot of sense for me then to be in higher ed, because it's all about building some kind of store of knowledge. But also I realized how, like, having that as a starting point is great and all, but you need to build people up to that oftentimes, because they're not encouraged to do that often. They're not encouraged often in kind of communities. There's some kind of hierarchy. They're not encouraged in their classes. There's a like a sage on the stage type of format often. And then the papers that they're given, they're not encouraged through like clear direction necessarily. How do I get to the point that I can actually make a contribution? So it's like, it was always, where are you getting guidance? Who's like cultivating that feeling for you? What kind of designs are in place? Like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault if the design is wrong, or the design is off, or it's for some communities. Like, from the beginning, it was maybe unaware to me, but it was a conversation about how do we bring more equity into the equation? How do we build something that is more inclusive for more people? It was just I want as many of us to be part of the conversation and to create something that is that emotionally speaks to us, can allow for us to have a financial both stake in the community and a way where we feel comfortable. And we're often kind of at odds with that. It's the inequities of the structures became much more clear as I left and started looking back on it. And I guess in that moment, it became clear that my values were at odds with the way that system was set up. And my personality is one where it's like, well, how do I make a contribution? If I see this as there's a gap, there is a need to change. What can I actually do?
So with that, you 10 years ago you started City Tutors, and you call it a non-profit startup, right? Or a not-for-profit startup. Do you still embrace that startup thing even after 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, 10 years goes by real quick. I started when I was 24. And I thought that it was just, there was this burning of, I need to do something more. This is not, the fact that I have to go to these different schools and try to piece together a living, because I had to rush from Long Island, go to Manhattan, go to Hudson County, and do that sometimes 2 of those things a day.
Teaching at those
yeah,
places? As an adjunct?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then sometimes also do some workshops for high schools. At the top end, I was teaching 12 classes and doing some workshops and teaching maybe like 400 or 500 students a semester at the ripe old age of 23. And I'm like, this is just not sustainable. This is like, I can't even remember these students' names. And I'm physically getting sick from traveling. I'm a young man who feels really, really old. And also, it's not nurturing. Something is wrong. It doesn't feel like I'm actually doing anything, moving the needle. Students leave, new students come in. I have no understanding of where they go, what they do. Did I make any? any contribution to their growth. And so that's why I started it. But the institution that is City Tutors really only started forming the last couple of years. Because I would define it as this. So we have a mission. Our aim is to take tutoring and mentoring resources that have historically been for specific demographic or geographic locations and make that readily accessible to the widest number of people in New York and make it something that is accessible at a time and pace that they need it. Create that kind of ambitious MTA-like public utility that is an institution for New York. That only came around when we left City College. For 7 years before that, we were a program serving the school and had community involvement. And before that, it was an idea where we were doing things with certain partners, but kind of unaffiliated and unincorporated, no official status. So it's constant. It's an evolution. We've gone through phases, and this is our newest phase, where we're a butterfly, but a young one, and we need to figure out how to do this type of work. We figured out what we needed to do, and we went through that life cycle at each stage. But it's very much as a startup. It's only in its third year. But the work has been 10 years to get to this point. So for anybody thinking, how long does it take to create a startup? Sometimes it could take 1/3 of your life. And now is the fun part and the hardest part, because you're not under some auspice of some other institution. You don't have the benefit of a job that is clearly defined. You don't have a supervisor who gives you assignments. You have to constantly be creating and holding yourself accountable. And of course, there's a board and they hold you accountable, but you're having to determine whether what you're doing is the right fit for you, always, because you could be doing something else. Like being in this social entrepreneurial space is so interesting. It gives you that great creative freedom, but it also opens you up internally to a constant self-critique. Because is this a vanity project? Is my resources, my mental resources, my ability, technically, should it be directed some other way? Is somebody else having better ideas, better institutions that I should be part of? And every day I wake up and think about that, and I'm like, well, if City Tutors was somewhere else and somebody else was doing it, then I could say, yes, I should move on. Mm-hmm. But this is important. This type of institution should exist. I'm surprised it doesn't exist going into it. Why is it? We have a public transportation. We're in the richest city in the country, where we also have the most well-built out system of engaging with all communities. And yet somehow the communities don't talk to each other and don't share resources and don't, at the very least, try to support each other in the learning and the professional growth of each other. Why? We're a community. We're New Yorkers. What does that mean to us? To me, it's as simple as just making people aware of each other and then allowing them to go at their own pace in building, fostering relationships and pursuing their own ends. It's not about trying to get people to become finance professionals or teachers or anything like that. Just like when you get on a train, I'm not trying to get you to Cortlandt Avenue or to Harlem. Mm-hmm. That's up to you to decide. what I know is there's a richness in opportunities. There's a richness in the city of resources. And each one of the people who are here, whether they have been here for 20 years or they're just coming in, has such great potential to be something, a force for good for the city. And since the city is the place that kind of drives the entire country, like if you are here and you become a force for good here, you're really making the country great.
Okay, so the not-for-profit is called City Tutors. And I happen to know from the inside, I'm the program success manager, but I happen to know from the inside that the City Mentors arm has been exploding over time. What happened? How did that happen? You started out as a City Tutors, and all of a sudden City Mentors is stepping in and, you know, edging its way in there. What was that like?
Yeah, so it came out of an existential crisis. The pandemic hit us, and we're the City Tutors. We're an education organization that can't educate anybody because everything is closed. We work through other organizations.
Okay.
So we have this volunteer base. Now what? Where do we need to exist? How long this pandemic will last? We didn't know. This is me thinking March 2020. And I'm looking out and I'm thinking, so now the big question is, and this is, by the way, at the time when we're starting to move ahead to becoming our own nonprofit. So this is right there, and it's the worst time for us to be doing that. Should we even be bothering? Should we all be looking for new jobs? And is this venture, is it worth it anymore? But so many people on my feed are saying, I don't know what I'm going to do when the summer comes. I don't know what job will I have. Things are closed. And what we always had internal from the very beginning of our founding, we're volunteer-based, volunteer-run. I never wanted the volunteers to feel like they're the most important part of the organization. They are our first, the first people we need to take care of. They're our first clients. Because if you don't have the volunteer support, if you do not have them seeing that they are actually able to do good through this vehicle that we've built, then they will leave. And then the whole enterprise collapses. You can't have the focus be just on the student if you have no way to serve them. And so from the original kind of conceiving of City Tutors, it was always, how do we support the volunteers' growth? And we had first kind of a career coach, and then we started moving away from a single person serving a caseload of volunteers to let's do a mentor relationship, because there would be a lot of people coming through and they didn't want to volunteer as a tutor. But I was thinking, how do we best leverage their skills in support of our work? And so they started working with them, but it was always small. There was always, out of whatever collective that we had, there was only so many people who were interested in doing that. And so when the pandemic hit and the tutoring stopped, there is this thing that we do. We do professional development for the volunteers. Mm-hmm. Well, what if we, for the moment, separate those two things and just offer that to everybody? This, what was a perk, what was a retention tool, now is going to be available to the whole city, and we will redirect our resources. But it so quickly became the case that so much need is there in that area, comparative to the tutoring piece. After just a year, it was already 1,000 mentorships. And since then, every year, it's been another 1,000. And so it just became so clear. This is such an important part. Of course, you know, when you get that gut feeling, it's like, why wasn't I doing this before? This is such an obvious thing. Like, I was always interested in it. I'm a teacher, but I also worked in career services. Like, that is another reason why I started City Tutors, is that when I would work and I ran the resume clinic, so many students would come in and they would be like, I did everything I needed to. I studied, I took the test, I passed, I did well. Get me a job. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I can move things around on your resume. Feels kind of like the Titanic right now, moving chairs. You need experiential opportunities, and at the time there wasn't much. The curriculum wasn't leading to that, didn't have capstones, not always, and it's still the case that it's kind of irregular, but that's a much broader national issue. So originally it was experiential to do tutoring, and then we would have coaching, but now it's like, well, what if you had that experience? You could always volunteer with us, but then you also need to receive support on an individual level so that your learning is in your hands, and wherever you are, you can get that assistance so that you can position up skill. And it doesn't matter if it's around academic subjects or if it's whatever subject, 21st century skills, whether it's coding, whether it's something else. And then you need to have conversations. You need to be preparing early for those next professional steps. You cannot be starting to think about it once you graduate. And we could do both of that. And so the mentoring program began as the existential thing. It became very clear that it was a must. And it then became even clearer that on a theory level, it was so inextricably tied to the educational piece, because for so many students, you don't go to school to learn. You go to school to prepare for the next part of your job. You go to school to position yourself for the next phase of your life, which will be a job. It's a credential system that we're playing from K through 12 to college. And if you don't go to college, to some certificate, like, people aren't learning because they want to learn. Unfortunate that it has to be phrased like that, but that's what the systems around have created. You don't have enough time. You have to, everybody has to work to survive, but especially in New York, if you're first generation, if you are recent to the country, I still remember being the 10-year-old kid helping my mom get $20. How I had to work at a video store for the whole week just so that collectively, the two of us could earn $20 so we would have food. Like, that sticks with me. I've had to work from a very early age, and it was never, I could just do things that would make me better, more competitive. I had to survive. We had to survive. And I know so many CUNY students and so many New Yorkers are just trying to survive. So they need to have an easier way. New York can offer an easier way, and it doesn't cost money necessarily. It's a time thing, it's a willingness thing, it's just a reimagining thing.
So with City Tutors, City Mentors, we do these events. We do these 3-4 a week, where we speak to the best and the brightest in front of young college students, and they give advice. So you've heard all the advice. You've heard all the advice from the best minds, PhDs, heads of industry, heads of educational systems. What's the best advice you've heard? What's the best advice you can offer to Anybody, a young immigrant, a young college student, a person who wants to do a startup. Have you found that piece of advice that's like, aha, this people have to hear? What's that advice?
Yeah. Failure is your IP, your greatest IP. So your intellectual property. If you don't fail, you're in a worse position than somebody who has failed quite a lot. And then, is that kind of axiomatic? If you know anything about business, obviously you're going to fail. If you know anything about your own journey, you have failed quite a lot. That's what makes you you. That's what got you to whatever opportunities you're now pursuing. It's because you've now failing and not learning from those failures. That's one thing. But if you fail and you remember that failure and you know how to do it better and you keep doing that, you want to fail as much as possible because you're improving at a faster rate than somebody else who's not failing. And they're just kind of lackadaisical. It's the turtle and the hare situation. So I want to fail as much as possible. Every time we get into these calls, I want how we're doing wrong. I want that because every time we fix that, we're better. We're better for everybody. And that is something everybody should be doing. You should be hungry for knowing what you're not good at. Hungry to know that information.
Wow.
And not shying away from that at all, but leaning into it as much as possible. Good, obviously, positive reinforcement is important. If you're constantly, if the world is just pushing onto you failure, it's very easy to suffocate and to get paralyzed. So you need to build a community of people who are going to support you and will allow you to discover your flaws in a safe space. So it's not about high stakes failure, because there's only so many of those that you could do before you really get pushed into a corner. But those who don't, this comes out of actually my education. I'm a writing specialist. Writing is an iterative process. You can only get a better draft by getting criticism. You have to go to those workshops. And that's everything. That's running a business. That is becoming a better employee at a Fortune 500 company. That's being a better brother, father, sister, grandparent, what have you. So failure is your IP. Covet it. Desire it. And build that treasure trove of all those past experiences where you struggled, and then look to the left and you'll see all the times when you succeeded because you remember that failure and you didn't do that thing the next time.
When I asked that question, I didn't expect to get such a profound response. But you see why I dig this guy, man, because he's thinking on a level. His mind is working on a wavelength as well. His mind is vibrating at a different level as far as responses to things, the way you process or the way you receive things. Okay, so all that being said, what do you hope to see City Tutors turn into? What's your ultimate goal?
Well, one, I hope eventually somebody will want my job. That will be the biggest honor. It's like this isn't a vehicle for self-enrichment. I was like, I have a part to play on this, and then I want to leave it to another generation that are going to know how to do it better. And that will be the greatest, most exciting moment to meet that person who will say, I want to be doing this at the top level, and I have ideas around how we could do this. But I think it's fulfilling the mission. It's creating that public utility, creating that public good that will be there for everybody, that everybody wakes up is able to take out their phone and then sees this app, sees this access point. I want to meet with a professional from this field that I've been thinking about, being able to just go click on the app, or being able to say, I need a tutor, and then being able to do the same. And if it's not, you don't want to do it through a computer, that there are sites all across the city that are in partnership with us, where you can go there and in person do that. And so either from your home or in person, you have access to this citywide free resource because you are a New Yorker and you have the right, and you should be able to craft your dreams knowing that the city is providing this resource to you as a starting point. And then everything else is up to you. Dream as big as you want.
There's so many questions I typically ask, but I don't think that's necessary to ask you the typical questions, except for this one. What did we leave out of this discussion? Is there anything you want to share that I didn't ask you about that you want to insert?
Yeah, well, I have to give a shout out to my mom, because if it wasn't for her bringing me to this country, kind of being her own entrepreneur, removing herself from a place of language, of institutional knowledge, and bringing me to this place where, I would have had a ceiling in my country. I'm a Lithuanian Jew. I came here on religious asylum. I cannot be playing at the top level over there. My mom was a valedictorian. She went to a university to work as a researcher, where she was discriminated against, put into the most hazardous division, had her face paralyzed part of the time because of working conditions, and also was constantly called a Jew, and that they were going to burn her face. Like, yeah, there might have been that type of life for me. Obviously, modern, post-Soviet maybe would have been better, but that unknown, like, what's better, either that or this unknown? She felt this was right, and she took a chance, and I was able to flourish here in a way that I can't imagine that I could have over there. And she's like every other parent who comes here. Like, when I say every other parent, I don't want to make it that she is just like others. Each immigrant experience is both this shared experience, this unique journey of difficulty, and I think it's irrelevant, and it's unnecessary to compare the challenges between those experiences. That we're coming here because we think this is the best place. It is a very difficult journey when you get here and you realize how hard it actually is to make this the best space. But the fact that she did that, and she sacrificed everything, and then she has worked so hard to position me for where I am, like that, I'm forever indebted to that. And I think about that every time I think about an adult learner trying to learn English to support their family, because what a game changer that is. Every child who has a parent who can't make it to their parent-teacher conference and doesn't know much about their child's education because they're so focused on just making dollars, putting food on the table. Like, that to me is, those individuals, their stories really connect with me, and this enterprise, this social startup is for them. This organization is built to ensure that everybody, especially them, has a way to grow and experience the fullness of the American experience.
Dude, we can never give too much praise to our moms when we're kids and we're growing up. We have no idea how brilliant, how strong, how resilient. Our mothers are gangsters and soldiers and parents and everything. And when we're young, we know they're everything, but it takes a long time for us to actually be able to see it and identify it and articulate the things our mothers had to do to take us, to give us opportunity and take us to a better life and take us incredible. Our mothers are amazing. Amazing. They can never get too much credit. Okay. Well, there we go. We heard it all from the mouth of the man who founded this thing called City Tutors, and the guy that's taking me on an adventure every day by introducing me and inserting me into these into this scholarly arena where we get a chance to be on the front lines of helping people. That's what my life is all about. I've committed my life to that. And I appreciate you allowing me to share this journey with you. Ladies and gentlemen, Garri Rivkin, the Executive Director of City Tutors. Thank you so much, Garri. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to interview you. Garri Rivkin, everybody. City Tutors. Yeah!
Thanks so much.